This is Tim.
And this is Adam.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Adam in Nagoya. How are you?
I'm all right. It's a very hot and getting slightly more humid day today. So,
yeah. Do you know, has the rainy season started as we record here on June 8th? It may very well have started, but I'm not sure.
I think it has. In fact, I think it starts maybe just before June. And I mean, the beginning of June.
Seems like it was early this year.
Yeah, I mean, it was raining constantly, but we're still expected to have lots of rain, I think, in the next, week or two. So I don't think it's finished yet, but.
Oh, no. It'll go on into July, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so this time we have a comic called Galacto, Pit Fighter by Kirt Burdick. The first thing I'll say about this is that it's pretty well drawn. The second thing I'll say about it is it's pretty gruesome.
You know what? As I was reading this, I was thinking Tim's not going to like this one. It's going to be really because it's so over the top with the violence and stuff. So
yeah, I'm not even sure what I think of it right now. I mean, I'm not quite my thing. I mean, okay. Well, first of all, I mean, this is not gruesome, but the very, very first panel, we have a flying saucer pulling the body of Frankenstein's monster out of its grave in Germany in 1813. So, it's kind of over the top from the first panel. But later on in this first issue, we have a person decapitated with a punch, another person bludgeoned to death with a goat, a guy taking a big bite out of a dog, and a little girl who is basically fried and then resurrected in a lab apparently using Frankenstein technology. So, it's not what would typically come to mind when you say, "Oh, this is set in 1813 in Germany."
Yeah, very true. And let's not forget that the very, very last page is a fist coming down very quickly on a baby. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah, that's apparently the back cover.
Yeah. So, if I was in a store and I saw something with the back cover was a fist, like, about to punch a baby, I think I would definitely pick it up to flip through it, at the very least.
But, yeah, I mean, I thought the art was quite good. It looks really nice, and I didn't find any problems with it. I'm kind of at a loss for what to say about it. What did you think of the art?
Yeah, first of all, I think that the colors are very, very expertly done. There's a good sense of like how the colors, there's kind of complementary colors. I'm looking at a panel right now towards the end where the Frankenstein type of character, I think his name is Galacto, he's wearing like medical scrubs. And so like the pink in his skin, and then the blue of his scrubs, and then the kind of green of the walls. It all has this really nice kind of complementary thing going on. There's some kind of cool like gradients, like rainbowy kind of gradients that go on that don't look tacky. They look really kind of stylish and nice with the like these flying demon. I think they're called Satanauts or something like that.
Oh, the three like disembodied heads floating around in maybe glass orbs.
Right, yeah. And
yeah,
he does
apparently they have resurrected Frankenstein to become Galacto, or Frankenstein's monster, I should say, to be precise.
Yeah, so I think, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, the way I understood this is that when people are kind of candidates for becoming a Satanaut, which are these creatures that can travel around the world and do whatever they want, kind of almost like a phantom or a ghost. In order to do that, they have to go through these trials, and one of the trials, I think, requires them killing a lot of people So like they're sent to some particular time or some particular place and made to kill a lot of people. And then when they pass these trials, then they're finally decapitated and they can become one of these flying alien specter things. So I think that's what this whole thing is supposed to be.
You got more out of it than I did, I guess.
Well, there's a big info dump at the end that kind of explains that. But
okay, maybe I just didn't read that part.
Yeah, it's just a block of text at the end that does that. But even if he's supposed to kill people and things like that, it's pretty intense the way he bites the dog's stomach out and kills a guy by hitting it with a goat and things like that. So, but it doesn't it also doesn't really show whether he is becoming this Satanaut of his own volition or if they just chose a random body. I don't know necessarily about that, but
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there are plenty of unanswered questions. What I found a little puzzling, just from a story writing perspective, is that, so we've got this little girl and her really a-hole father and her apparently mentally retarded brother, who the father is trying to train to be a soldier. And I felt like, that was setting up some story, and then the father and the brother are both killed. So I thought, like, well, was that just sort of a red herring, or are these points still going to be come back to later? I mean, are they going to be resurrected too, or I was a little puzzled by the setup there that doesn't seem to have a payoff coming.
Yeah, I don't think that these characters have any really, I don't know, I don't think they come into play in the story. So, I mean, I can read just a little bit from the last page that explains a little bit about what's going on. But they say, the Satanauts travel the galaxy in search of an Antichrist destined to destroy the universe, believing an undead creature on planet Earth to be their pontiff of despair. They kidnap the beast and transform it into a living force field. Christened with the name Galacto, the unified instrument of deconstruction, strikes out against every hero sprinkled across space and time. So that's kind of the premise that's going on here, why they come to Earth and have taken this guy.
I kind of would have liked that in the comic. I mean, I saw that text and I just kind of bailed, which often happens, I think, not just me. There's been, I think, a tendency in a lot of indie comics to do some kind of essay in the back or the front to explain the comic, and I think it's better if the comic explains itself.
Yeah, I agree. Although I will say, even if this wasn't there, if this page wasn't there, the story is just kind of I don't know, it's almost like the old Troma movies or something. It's just this kind of violence for violence sake and, kind of, funny monsters and stuff. It's to the point where the violence is so over the top that it almost loses its effect, and it's supposed to just it becomes almost comical. And in that way, I think it's, it succeeds for sure. But I agree. There's not. I guess if you didn't have this last page, there isn't much of a story necessarily.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Since I didn't read it, I figured that explanation was coming in the comic in issue 2. But okay.
I will say one of the only things, because they set up this. So the story is set up, as you said, with a terrible father and a son who kind of looks like that creature from the Goonies. But in a suit of armor, and they both die. She dies. I suppose she dies. I'm not sure if she's actually dead or not. But she is resurrected at the end as Gretchen Wolfenbüttel. So I guess she's going to be part of his. Because he sort of defies the creatures, and he doesn't kill her.
Yeah, so they kill her, and then he resurrects her and offers her a piece of cake, which I found particularly puzzling.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. But yeah, it almost looks like it sets it up as this sort of almost like a lone wolf and cub kind of thing or something like that at the end, where it's going to be this little girl monster creature with this guy who's basically a living weapon, you know, kind of defying these traveling Satanauts or something like that. If that's what it's setting it up to be, then that is a fairly interesting premise, I think, to begin the series.
Yeah, I mean, I think the violence being so over the top, I mean, it was a little hard to look at, but it didn't completely turn me off. Because, as you said, it almost becomes funny just how over the top it is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just the idea of beating somebody to death with a goat, and the goat is alive when he starts doing it, and by the end it's come apart and it's just a leg, I think. But
yeah,
yeah, it's just like very, very extreme violence that is trying to push the envelope in a way, and that's why I said it kind of reminds me of old Trauma pictures or something like that, like the old, I don't know, like Toxic Avenger and stuff like that, where it's just like they want to try out their special effects and how much blood and stuff they can put in, because that's kind of like the whole purpose of the movie. And that's kind of what I feel like in this case. It's like he has built this story around, which actually could be a very interesting premise, I think, going forward, you know, this little girl and this kind of monster. But it almost seems secondary, like he wanted to draw these disgusting creatures doing disgusting things, which is fun, you know.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, so yeah, you know, the artist sent us also a PDF of a previous book that he'd done, and so I wanted to see if that was sort of a similar thing. I went and checked out his other book, and that one is more just a fantasy story. There isn't so much of this violence and stuff like that, but the thing that I find common about the two of them is that it seems like he's drawing what he wants to draw, and so he's creating stories based on what will be fun and interesting for him to do visually, which I think is a kind of a cool way to tell a story, just because you end up getting really inventive stuff. Like in the other one, he had people riding on giant frogs and things like that. And, you know, I think that like kind of letting the artistic side, the visual side of your brain take over in these cases takes you to places that you wouldn't normally do if you're just writing a narrative story and focus on the story. So, you know, I think it sort of can, I don't know how I want to say it. I guess it kind of can free you from the constraints of a straightforward story, in a way.
Mm-hmm. I should mention he got this to us soon enough that it had time to get to the top of the queue while his Kickstarter is still going on. In fact, it only started at the beginning of June, and he's already, you know, beat his goal by quite a bit. And he still has, as we record here, 24 days to go. So, but yeah, so there's still plenty of time for that. So if listeners are interested, I'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a crowd for this type of thing. There's definitely an audience for this type of thing. And yeah, like I said, as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, Tim's not going to like this. But you know, as you said, the artwork is really well done. It's a very professional looking book, both in terms of just the way that the panels are created and the action. There's a lot of really dynamic. You can see like a lot of motion, and you know, and the faces have a lot of pathos and kind of, I don't know, really good expressions and things like that. So every character looks very different from the other one. I think it's really, the design of the book and everything is all really, really well done. So I would be curious to see where this goes, to be honest. I mean, this was, I think, just supposed to set up the world so that we know what's going on. And from that point on, I think he'll start telling a story. So,
yeah, I guess the part of the reason I was puzzled about the father dying so quickly, I mean, I was really curious about his clothes. I mean, he's apparently a shepherd. He's holding a shepherd staff, and there are sheep around, and the very unfortunate goat. But he has a peg leg, and he's wearing what is apparently a soldier uniform of the time, but the kind of tall hat that he's wearing has a skull and crossbones on it, which I don't think was ever standard for any military uniforms. So, yeah, I was really curious about what he was wearing, but maybe we don't get the backstory of that.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, right when I saw him off the bat, I thought, oh, he looks like a Otto von Bismarck kind of character or something like that. And this is supposed to be during the Napoleonic Wars. But when I say Napoleonic Wars, I don't think it's the Napoleonic Wars like England versus France. I think it's like France versus Germany, or maybe the Holy Roman Empire or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know the history real well, but they are in Germany, and he's expecting, I guess, Napoleon's troops to come by, and there's supposed to be a battle, and he's hoping that after the battle they can swipe a musket to give to the son so he can be a soldier. I don't think just giving him a musket is going to help, but that's the plan, and she's supposed to be watching for the troops to come by. But yeah, she sees the Frankenstein body being resurrected by the UFO and thinks that it's an angel raising the body of Lazarus. Yeah, raising Lazarus from the grave. And the father just slaps her and says, that's not what you're supposed to be watching for, and quit making up stories. So, yeah, real nice guy.
I think that they're setting him up in two ways. I think they're kind of setting it up, first of all, that her family's so terrible and her life is so bad that it would almost be an improvement for her to go with this guy, or at the very least, she's not losing much. So that kind of frees her to be, the kind of sidekick of this creature of Galacto. I think also it almost seems like he's kind of poking fun of, some of the ideas and norms of the time, that women were this kind of subservient creature that's supposed to help the male children achieve success and stuff like that. So,
yeah, it just seems like he put a little more work into the setup than might have been required, because he built all this kind of other stuff that may never pay off, and kind of raised a bit of interest. So I don't know. I suppose that's good, but I would think that if he put as much work into that setup as he did, I'd expect it to pay off at some point, and it doesn't seem like it's going to.
I do agree that. I do agree that it could have been maybe handled better with some more explanation. I mean, like you said, these people don't really matter to the story, but we should have been given some more information about why this is even going on. I guess it's kind of the backstory of this girl, who I assume will become a more important character. But I agree, like, he put a lot of kind of thought into the father and the son, and then they ended up not being important at all.
Yeah, although, I've heard that sometimes writers will write up all this backstory that is never revealed in the actual story. So maybe that's what Kirt has done here.
Yeah, what was that? I think it was like Game of Thrones or something like that I was reading about, where they actually hired a ethno-linguist or something like that, who to create some of the languages for that show, he actually created a mother language that all of the other languages spun off of, so that they would have similar roots to each other, even though they were not intelligible to each other and stuff like that. Like, that level of commitment to creating something where you have the, similar etymologies and stuff, or cognates or whatever.
Right, or something like Star Trek or Star Wars, where like whole alien languages have been made up.
Yeah.
Where they could have just said blah, 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 and it would have passed for a foreign language.
Yeah, but that attention to detail is, I think what keeps a lot of the fans on board. And I guess, people who create this kind of genre medium, like, people who try to create science fiction and fantasy and stuff like that, I think they love the world building, and the more you put into that world building, the more interesting the story becomes. So that could be part of what's going on here too. Just not necessarily to serve the story, but just to kind of serve the whole overall universe that it takes place in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, make it more interesting than it necessarily had to be.
Maybe.
But yeah, I think that's kind of nice.
Yeah, and so on that point about the world building, I think that now that I'm thinking of that, I do agree with you that it would have been interesting to have that last page that's this big long essay about what's going on. It would have been interesting to have that as part of the comic, because there are some interesting ideas here. These Satanists can travel across different star systems and things like that, and basically at the speed of thought and all that kind of stuff. So,
I think the story, the comic, is a good place to start because it gives you some action and it draws you in. You don't want to start with all the backstory necessarily, but issue 2, I can see doing several pages on the backstory.
Yeah, I agree. I guess looking at this, it would be really challenging to draw all of the things that he's set out to do. So, it's a pretty ambitious story.
Yeah, my first reaction was that it wasn't really for me, but as we're talking about it, my curiosity is increasing about issue 2. Like, where is this going?
Just, if it goes where I'm thinking it's going, if you imagine like that Lone Wolf and Cub thing where this guy has to take care of this girl, but at the same time, he has to be this destructive force that kills all these other people. And maybe this girl, I don't know, if she either goes the way where she's trying to be like him and she becomes destructive herself, or if she's the voice of reason in his ear. I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways this could go. It has that almost like the Leon the Professional kind of thing going on as well. So yeah, it could be really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so that is Galacto Pit Fighter issue 1. So we'll be back with another comic in a couple weeks. So thanks a lot, Adam, for coming on.
Yep, thanks as always, Tim.
Check out the Galacto Kickstarter page, linked from the show notes. Go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, to shop on Amazon to support the show, and to find links to subscribe to the podcast. Support our show at patreon.com/deconcomics. Our theme is from bensound.com. Next Wednesday on Deconstructing Comics, Emmett is joined by Dr. Matt Finch to discuss the recent portrayals of Tony Stark as a futurist, what might be motivating the change, and what unintended consequences it might have. And Critiquing Comics will return in 2 weeks. See you then.